Good morning, everyone. How you feeling? Stretch it out a little bit. If you need to, say, oh, all right. Get ready to learn. We're going to have a fantastic time together, but of course, I'm going to need your energy, your attention, your focus. So if the person next to you is on their phone, just turn to them, grab their whole phone with the palm of your hand, and look at them and say, it's time to pay attention. Go ahead, grab it. Say, it's time to pay attention. We're going to have a wonderful experience today. I personally like to teach through stories. I like to tell stories, much like you as educators. I think stories do a lot to stick principles in our minds. So I'm going to tell you a story about May 20th, 1916. On May 20th, 1916, this man, Ernest Shackleton, did something that I don't think had ever been done before or since, and he brought 29 men back to life, some of them a year and a half after their funerals. On a little tiny island off the coast of South America called South Georgia Island, he did the impossible. Now, he didn't look like this when he did the impossible. He looked like this. He looked a little different. He cleans up well. How did he do it? How did he bring 29 people back to life, 29 men back to life? And I'm going to give you one word. It was all about trust. They trusted him in a way that your teachers and your students need to trust you. They need to see you the way his men saw him. So I'm going to tell you the end of that story, but I want you to be thinking, how does someone do that? How does someone engender that much trust that he can do incredible things like that? All right, now, I told you I was going to give you a little PhD, so we're going to give you a little PhD in trust. One thing you have to do as a PhD student, or who here has a doctorate degree? Anybody here have a doctorate degree? Who's thinking about getting one? Who's thinking about getting one? I would say that a PhD it must be a lot like dying. It was 2008. I remember 2008. I said to my wife, I think I want to go get a doctorate. She said, "Okay, go now. Before our kids get any older, go." So I went, and all of a sudden it was 2014. And I looked around, and all my friends had moved on without me. The Utah Jazz weren't good anymore. And I thought, well, they really weren't good to begin with, but they weren't as good anymore. And I thought, what happened? And I came back to life. It really is your whole life. For 5 to 6 years. It's everything you think about. I remember my children. I remember them when they were little, and then all of a sudden they grew up. I didn't realize that children grow faster than dissertations. But what I want to share with you is, so you don't have to go through that process, is all the wonderful things that I learned during that. Man, there were so many golden nuggets of information. I thought this will really help principals, educators, leaders in school. So it all began with this guy, Elton Mayo. So Elton Mayo is a researcher like me in the 1940s. He's researching levels of light in factories. So he wants to see if we can lower the level of lights in the factory. Do people still produce, right? Because if we can show that, then we can reduce our electricity bills, and people will still, right, produce the same amount. We can raise profit. So as he's studying this, he noticed something, that every time he took interest in a particular worker, that worker worked better. It didn't matter what the level of light was. So he switched his study. He finished that study, and he said, I want to study something else. I want to study when people are paid attention to, does their productivity increase? This had never been thought of before. When your grandparents or great-grandparents went to the factory, they were another piece of the factory, right? They were put in for 14 hours. They were put out. If they broke, what happened? They were replaced, just like any other machine in the factory. This had never been thought of, that somehow if you paid attention to human beings, they might work better, they might produce more. And he came down to this conclusion. One friend, one person who is truly understanding, who takes the trouble to listen to us as we consider our problems, can change everything, can change our whole outlook. Now, that's common knowledge to you, but it wasn't then. Now it's common knowledge in the business world, right? Warren Buffett says, trust is like the air we breathe. When it's present, nobody really notices. Nobody walked in here this morning and went, okay, that's good air. No one did that, right? But if it wasn't here, would you notice? If it was poisoned, would you notice? That's the same with trust, right? When it's in a school, no one really notices, but when it's poisoned, everybody notices. So let me give you just a quick lit review. Here's what we know. We know when trust goes up, oh, let me go back there. When trust goes up, turnover goes down. People want to stick around. There was many principals in the low trust schools that I went to. There were many principals who said, we just have high turnover. People move a lot. And I said, well, people move away from you a lot, right? But guess what teachers weren't telling the principal? The teachers weren't saying, I can't work with you anymore, I'm leaving. No one burns bridges like that. They just say things like, oh, my spouse got another opportunity, or this came up, I'm thinking of doing this. They would just walk away, because how many of you have ever worked in a low trust culture? How many of you have ever Sunday night dreaded going to work the next day, right? You're just like, no, it can't be. The weekend went by way too fast. I can't go back there for another 5 days. Okay, I'm going to give it a try, right? I'll focus on the students. And eventually people wear out and they leave. Job satisfaction goes up, as you can imagine. People stick around. Productivity rates go up. Politics and gossip go down. I don't know if that happens in your schools, but it happened in the schools I was studying. You're like, never in mine. There's no politics. There's no gossip, right? No one does that in Nevada, right? No, people do that in Nevada. They do that across the board. Communication goes up, and here's the big one. Innovation goes up. Why do people try new things in a high-trust culture? They feel safe. They feel like, I'm going to try something new, right? I have a sister, Chantal. She would never learn to drive stick with my father, right? Do you remember when cars used to come with the manual transmission? She couldn't do it. Why? Because he would get so angry at her when she'd stall the car. She'd say, I can't learn with you. I cannot learn with you. And she wouldn't try new things because she didn't feel safe. She didn't feel safe. This is from Friedman. He says, without trust, there's no risk-taking. And without risk-taking, there's no innovation. And by the way, I can get you all these slides, so you don't have to feel like you have to write everything down or take pictures of. If you like something, I'll make sure Dr. Zuki gets it, and we'll send it out. If you want to get more people to take the necessary risks to innovate, you've got to put more trust in the room. No low trust organization will ever produce sustained innovation. People will not try new things. When it comes to culture and equity, they won't branch out because they don't feel safe. They won't venture in, try to learn about other cultures and other people because they don't feel safe. They'll stick with what they know. If you'll open up I was really impressed with this handbook. Do you all have a copy of this? I've been reading through this morning, and if you haven't read through this is a very impressive booklet. Go to page 26. Go to page 26. Tiffany, you're one of the authors on this, aren't you? Is Tiffany over there? You're one of the authors on this. Tiffany, this is good stuff. Go to page 26. This fits what Friedman is saying here. Page 26, look at the last paragraph. Students, their caregivers, and staff all deserve excellent customer service. This means creating an environment where everyone learns, grows, and feels safe and welcomed. When talking about customer service, people will only give as good as they get. There may be programs in place to provide what is necessary to students or to the end user, but if the staff feels neglected or abused, the services they deliver will not be of high quality, right? The toxicity of the environment will then spill over into clients in the community. All stakeholders, therefore, have to be included when managing the culture. That's what we're talking about here. No low-trust culture will ever produce sustained innovation. It won't, because people will do what? When people don't feel safe, where does all their time and energy go? Protecting themselves. All their time and energy goes into protecting themselves. Have you ever seen a teacher do this? A teacher doesn't feel safe, so everything goes in, right? I close my door, don't come in here. I don't want, please don't come in and disturb my classroom. They feel, you come in and say, hey, I'd like to talk about it. No, I don't want to be talked to, right? Because I feel vulnerable. I'm not about to try anything new. All right. And this is the big one, of course, that in order to get the dissertation, I had to show how this mattered where the rubber hits the road, right? And really, when trust goes up, students succeed. Now, we want all students to succeed, and that we're more likely to do that if we can build an environment of trust in our schools. Do I have you convinced? All right, let me give you a little more lit review, and then we're going to move forward with the model. There's an idea in literature is called propensity to trust. The idea that every individual in the school, every student, every teacher has a differing propensity to trust. Is anybody here just a high trust person? You trust most people because most people deserve it. Let me see my high trusters. There you are. You and me, we're a lot alike. I just trust people. Who here is like my wife? Low trust. You got to earn it. Who here is low trust? You're going to have to earn it with me, right? How many of you didn't vote at all? Cowards. All right, for example, I was with my family in Honduras about a year ago, and my wife took the older kids on a zip line, and she said, you stay here and watch these younger 3 boys, and we'll go on the zip line. I said, okay. And then about 15 minutes into it, I thought, I want to go on the zip line too. So I found this nice lady to watch these 3 boys. I said, she had been sitting there the whole time. She seemed rather nice. I said, would you mind watching these 3 boys? I'm going to jump on the zip line. I'll come back. And she said, sure. And I gave them all a bag of chips. I said, this is nice lady. What's your name? She is going to watch you. I'll be right back. And it was working fine until I ran into my wife on the zip line. I caught up to her, and she looked at me and looked around me, and then the look I got, she wasn't as happy to see me as I was to see her. And by the time I got back, because she was in front of me on the zip line, by the time I got back, she was gone. She had taken the 5 kids and gone back to the hotel, and I thought, how am I supposed to get back? That was weird. It's when 2 people with differing propensities to trust run into each other. Right? Because I'm a high truster, and the kids were fine. In fact, I ran into that lady a year later when I was back there. She said, hey, I watched your kids. I was like, hey, let's not talk about that right now. Right? So the idea is that you have to realize that every teacher you're dealing with has different experiences with principals. Have any of you, as educators, been burned by a boss before? How many of you have been burned by a boss, right? Well, you're going to have a differing propensity to trust when you come into a new situation. Now, you can't take that as an insult. You can't be like, well, why don't you trust me? It's not you they don't trust. It's their propensity to trust. So you have to be careful there and realize that some people are going to need a little more time and care than others. The best example of this I've ever seen is in a book called The Boys in the Boat. Have you read it? Have you read it? I'm going to highly recommend this. Look at the Amazon reviews on this book. It'll win the Pulitzer Prize. They're going to make a movie of it, I've heard. Thor's going to be in it. I don't know his name, but Thor. Harry Potter's going to be in it as well. I don't know his name. I imagine he's going to be someone else. But it's an incredible story about a kid named Joe Rance. Joe Rance grew up in the Great Depression. When he was 4 years old, his mother dies. Now, is that going to impact his life? Absolutely. As a 4-year-old, he can't articulate it, but it's going to have impact on his life. His father, not able to handle the death of his wife emotionally, sends Joe away. He's growing up in Seattle, puts him on a train and sends him to the East Coast to live with his his wife's sister, and Joe's aunt. So he lives out there with his aunt for a year and a half. Then Dad gets his act together and decides he wants Joe back. So he says, put him on a train. So for the second time in his life, he loses the woman who's at the middle of his world, right? And now he's back with Dad. But Dad's remarried to a woman named Tula, and Tula is not interested in Joe, because Joe represents the old life. And Joe, he tries so hard to please her, and she is constantly getting rid of him. He can't eat at the same table as the family. He can't play with her children, right? It's constantly trying to get rid of him. He can't figure out why. Well, I'll speed up the story here. Eventually, this kid is in 9th grade, and he comes home from school, and you have 9th graders. You know this age group. And there's a moving van at the house. And he said, Dad, where are we going? And his dad said, that's the thing, son. We're going. You're staying. Your mom's told me I got to choose between the 2 of you. And I got to go with her. She's got these little kids. So you're on your own now. And Joe Rance watches his family drive away. They don't give him an address. They don't tell him where they're going. He just drives away. Is this going to affect his propensity to trust? Just a little bit. This Joe Rance ends up on the 1936 rowing team at the University of Washington. It's a long story. I look forward to you reading it. You're going to love it. But he has a problem. His coach pulls him aside and says, Joe, I need to talk to you. I'm going to kick you off the team. I'm going to kick you off this team. Why? Because you cannot seem to row with the boys in the boat. Why do you row like you're the only person in the boat? I don't, Coach. No, you do, Joe. Why do you row like you're the only one? Who's ever done this before? I will make it on my own. Who's ever done this before? I will just do it myself. And that's what Joe had to do in order to survive. He had to make it on his own. But now his coach is asking him to, once again, for the first time in his life maybe, trust his team. He's got to trust his team. He's got to overcome this propensity to trust. Now, I won't tell you how it ends, although I don't think they'd make the book and the movie if it didn't end well. So be excited about the ending. Okay, let's talk. Let's say you're in. You're like, okay, Dr. Smith, I am ready to build trust with my teachers, with my students. How does it start? First day of school, how does it start? I've never met this person before. How does it start? I wish I could tell you there was a faster way around it, but there's only one way to build trust initially with another person, and that is through interaction that is frequent, personal, positive, and low risk. Interaction that is frequent, personal, positive, and low risk. Most people understand this. Let's go through them real quick. Frequent means I can't see you once a year and expect to have a relationship with you, right? It's just not going to happen. Personal means that I've got to see you often, and it's got to be a personal interaction. LeBron James and I have frequent interaction. It's just not very personal. You want to know why? He's on TV, and I'm sitting at home. So it's got to be more personal. We've got to, I see you, you see me, and we interact. Positive, meaning everybody walks away feeling good. And lastly, low risk. Low risk means in the beginning of a relationship, I don't make anybody feel vulnerable, right? I don't attack them. I don't walk in and try to make a big change, right? Because I'm just building this trust. So it's very low risk. Let's say I'm with all of my children. I have 5 of them. Let's say I'm with my 5 children and my oldest, who's 15. I say, as we're, playing a game or something together, okay, let's talk about grades, right? It went from low risk to high risk for her. And now all of a sudden she feels very vulnerable. So what's she going to do? Where's her time and energy going to go? Self-protection. You can see this happen when you try to move too quickly into high-risk situations. Now, sometimes you just have to. I get it. You're the principal. You have to have certain conversations. But just understanding this will help you, pick your battles. Say, you know what, I don't think our relationship is at this point yet, so I'm going to kind of leave this alone because I can. I hope you'll see that. Now, why would you want to move any further? Let's say this is happening. Frequent, personal, positive, low-risk interaction. Can I tell you something I did with my children that was in, how many of you have children? Can I see how many of you have children? So, quite a bit. All right. So my children, they're all born on a different day of the month. I got a daughter born on the 20th. I got a son born on the 14th of September. A son born on the 27th. So what I did in order, because I teach this stuff, I should at least try. We declared that day every month is their day, and they're going to be able to spend 2 or 3 hours alone with me. Right? So on the 20th of every month, my daughter knows it's her day. And she says, what are we going to do? Now, sometimes the 20th won't work because I'm away, so we do the 21st to the 19th, right? We have to work for it. We have to make it work. But the idea is that you're going to have frequent, personal, positive, low-risk interaction with me, right? We're going to build this relationship over. This is kind of like the coal in the fire. You have to keep feeding it. You just have to. This has a lot to do, and we could talk a long time about this. We won't. But this has a lot to do with principal visibility, right? Where do you get most work done for principals? In your office, right? And you're pouring over what you got to go over. Where do you get the least amount of work done? When you're walking around. When you're walking around talking to people. So principals have a tendency to spend more and more time in their office, right? But if you're doing that, what's happening less and less? This positive interaction with students and teachers. I'm around. I'm with them, and I get that. That's a time constraint you're dealing with almost on a constant basis. Now, why would I want to do this? Well, eventually, if I work hard enough at this, I'm going to move into high trust relationships. High trust relationships are where I can do things I can't do in low trust relationships. I can give critical feedback in a high trust relationship. What's critical feedback in a low trust relationship? That's criticism. In a low trust relationship, feedback will always be seen as criticism, even if you mean well. Think of your mother-in-law, right? She means well. She means well. She wants you to take this advice because you really need it, right? And you, what do you do when she gives you advice? You take it. You're tactful. Thank you. That is so helpful. Thank you so much. And then she leaves, you shut the door and go, how did you live with that woman that long, right? Right? Because you're not taking it. In a low trust relationship, say this again, in a low trust relationship, any feedback will be what? Criticism. Any feedback will be criticism. It doesn't matter how well-intentioned you are. But in a high-trust relationship, how many of you have people that could give you criticism and you would take it? How many people have people in their life, they could give you critical feedback and you would take it? Why would you take it? If it came from the exact same feedback came from a different person, you'd be insulted. Why would you take it from these people? Because you trust them. You've built up this relationship. This is where people will innovate. This is where people will seek help. Are there people in your life you go to for help? I'm struggling, I need help, right? You don't go to anyone, you go to those you trust. This is where people are truly productive. Now, the one thing, I know you're thinking, well, our school is high trust, we're doing well. Here's the one warning I'm going to give. This is from 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If we don't trust one another, then we aren't going to engage in open, constructive ideological conflict, and we'll just continue to preserve a sense of artificial harmony. Turn to the person next to you in the scariest voice you can muster. Say, beware artificial harmony. Tell them, beware artificial harmony. Beware artificial harmony. Right? Beware artificial harmony. How many of you have ever worked in a school of artificial harmony, where everyone just pretends? You've all been in this situation. Think Thanksgiving weekend. Artificial harmony, right? Why? We just pretend things are fine. We get together. It's all smiles and hugs, and we're all fine. And we just try to make it to Sunday, and everybody leaves, right? It's just artificial harmony. And some people can't even do 5 days. Have you noticed your little brother? He just can't handle it. He's gotta throw a wrench in the middle of all the artificial harmony. Now, I guess it works for Thanksgiving weekend, but does it work for a school? Artificial harmony? No, we just pretend things are fine. We just pretend things are okay. There's all these things under the surface, but things are fine. We'll just all smile, and every once in a while things blow up, and everybody just kind of retreats to their corner, and then we kind of pretend again. So how do you know? How do you know if you're in a high-trust culture? How do you know if you're in a high-trust school? Now, this is a long list. I'm breaking the laws of PowerPoint here, so hopefully you can see this in the back. Here are some indications, according to the research, that you have a low-trust school. Ask the person next to you if they've seen any of these in their school ever. I guarantee they have. It happens in every school. Just ask them which ones they've noticed in their own school. Before they can ask you, hurry, ask the person next to you, which one of these have you seen at your school, in your organization? They come up in every school. So according to the research, if you have some of these are indications that things are maybe getting worse, right? We're looking for trends here. If you're looking at this going, wow, a lot of my teachers are involved in kind of these things, or they feel this way. I call these low oil lights. They're low oil lights. When the low oil light comes on in your car, do you get rid of the car? No, you just say, I've got to spend more time, right? I've got to go take the time to change the oil. It's the same way with trust. It doesn't mean the relationships are all bad. It just means we haven't been spending enough time on trust. We need to stop and change the oil. So let me show you the indications of a high trust environment. You could probably guess them because most of them are the opposites. But ask the person next to you, say, when have you seen these in your school? Are you seeing them now? Ask them. Ask them. Go ahead. See if they say yes. Are you seeing any of these right now in your school? What's going on? If the person next to you hasn't answered you yet, just look at them with that disappointed face. You know, that I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Right? Are you seeing these in your school? Where are you trending? Are you trending more towards low trust? Is it getting worse in the last year? Is it trending more toward high trust over the last year? We're looking for trends. Are there more low oil lights, or are there less oil lights, low oil lights than in the past? Okay, I'll make sure to send these to you. Let's move on. So in order to graduate with a PhD, you have to have an acronym. Everybody does. I'll walk into my dissertation chair. She's like, have you thought of a good acronym yet? I think, all right, Pam, here I go. I go back to my office to think of an acronym, and it finally hit me that if you want to engender trust in your school, I found my acronym. I call it CORE, C-O-R-E. If you want to engender high trust in your school, you've got to do 4 things really well outside of this frequent interaction, right? That's the fire for the stove. Here's 4 things that you can work on. Now, you can't work on all of them all at the same time, but I do want to give you some challenges on each, right? What you could do. So let's first talk about compassion. What does it mean to be compassionate? Well, what we're really talking about is when I trust someone because of their compassion, I trust them because they're looking out for me. They have my best interest in mind. They're trying to understand me, right? They're trying to understand my culture. They're trying to understand my background, right? That's when someone is truly compassionate. Every principal, and I bet you already know this, should understand the difference between formal authority and moral authority. Formal authority is, I do what you say because I have to. You can withhold my check, you can fire me, I'll do what you say because I have to. Is formal authority important? Absolutely. We know who to blame. We know who signs checks, right? Formal authority is very important. Moral authority is, I do what you say because I want to. I do what you say because I want to. Ask the people at your table. This would be a good question. Ask the people at your table, how do you earn moral authority? As a leader in school, do you get to the point where students and teachers want to do things, not have to do things, they want to do things? I'll give you 60 seconds. Ask the people at your table, how do you get to the point where students and teachers want to follow, not have to follow? You got 30 more seconds. Keep going. Okay, this is the type of discussion we want to have when we're all done here and we have our 20-minute so what sessions. We want to continue these discussions. I love the format that we have here this morning. Let me tell you one story. Again, I like teaching through stories, and this might stick for you. There was a school in Chicago that I studied. I didn't visit, but I studied, who had, get this, 8 principals in 6 years. 8 principals in 6 years. They were struggling. But then on the 8th year, they turned around. They turned it around and took off. And of course, people like me are going, what happened? What happened? What made you different? So they went in and they talked to this principal. African-American woman, the first female principal they had of those. She came in and the researcher said, why did people follow you when they wouldn't follow anyone else? And she said, well, and she said all the answers that you and I would, right? We care about teachers. We care about students. We really focus on home, on our home situation. We try to help them, with their needs. She'd put in a laundry room because some of the kids were homeless and felt really badly about their clothes. And so, she had done all this, but other principals had done that too. So why you? What was so different about you? So they asked the teachers, and they gave the same answers your teachers would give. Oh, she cares about us. She cares about, you're like, yes, but that's what the other principal said. So what was different? And through all this data combing, it really came down to one moment. It was about 3 weeks into her administration as principal. She was sitting in the school by herself. You ever done this? And her head was against a locker. And she's like, what is that? Right? What have I gotten myself into? How is this going to happen? Anybody been there? It doesn't have to be a locker, but you've just been, I've exhausted all my options. This is not moving. This is not moving. And she said she was walking down the hallway. She's walking down the hallway, and she smelled something. It was the boys' bathroom. She went, what is that? Now, I've got a picture of a disgusting bathroom, but not so disgusting that you won't want to eat lunch. All right, so, I had to balance that out a little bit. So she said she went in there, and her thought was, how do you expect students to learn when this is the environment you give them? When this is their environment. She said, she called her husband and said, I will be late. She took her heels off. She went to the janitor's closet. She got the custodial, the tray, the cart out, and she pushed it over. Now, formal authority would have done what? I notify someone and I say, what are we doing here? Let's get this done. She said that didn't even cross her mind. Isn't that fascinating? It didn't even cross her mind that she should call someone in, and to do this. She just said, well, I'm here. So she started cleaning this bathroom. She said it was quite therapeutic, actually, to just kind of clean and think and clean and think. Now, here's what happened is there was a teacher who'd forgotten his wallet. So he came back to the school to get his wallet. He saw a light on, and he thought, thief, I'm going to catch him, right? And he went over, and there is his brand new principal on her hands and knees in the boys' bathroom. He knocked on the door and said, hey, right? And she said she was quite embarrassed, actually. She turned around and, she's disheveled, and she said, hi. She did not expect anyone to come visit. And he said, what are you doing? And she said, she kind of explained, I was walking by here, and I was just smelled disgusting, and I came in, and I thought, something needs to be done here. And he said, well, I'd love to stay and help. I got to run. Right? And she said, don't worry about it. And he said, okay. And he thought about that. He said he thought about that the whole way home. Wow, that was pretty incredible. So guess what he did the next day? He told another teacher about it. He said, hey, did you see they went to the boys' bathroom together, and they looked in. They said, I haven't seen it that way since the 1900s. Look at that, right? And then other teachers heard about it, and they said, in their kind of subconscious, they said, well, if she's willing to put in that kind of time, well, maybe I should be a little bit more willing. Maybe she is serious. Maybe this all isn't just, a talk. And so they started putting more time. And the students, they saw their teachers putting in a little more effort and really trying to make a difference. So they thought, well, maybe I'll try a little bit harder. And then parents saw students at home working a little bit harder. What are you doing? Well, I really want to do well. Well, really? And so the parents started to get more involved. It all turned around. Was it formal authority or moral authority? It was moral authority. They followed her because they wanted to, not because they had to. They followed her because they wanted to. If you haven't read The Anatomy of Peace, I recommend it. The best leaders are those whom people want to follow. We have a different word for people whom others follow only because of force or need. We call them tyrants, right? We call them tyrants. So now some of you are like, so I'm just supposed to be nice? I've done this before with principals, so I'm just supposed to be nice, I'm supposed to be a doormat, is that what you want? No, that's not what I'm after. I'm going to show you a little matrix here. What would you call a parent or leader or teacher who is low demand? Do you see that in the bottom left-hand corner? Who is low demand and also low care. I don't care about your behavior, and I don't care about you. What would you call them? Neglectful. That's called neglectful leadership, right? It's your boss, your first boss when you were 16. Do you remember this? I was 16, my boss was 17. I came in late, he said, I don't care. I said, I broke that. He said, that's too bad, right? I thought, this is the best boss ever. Right? He doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about what I do. Now, what would you call a principal or leader or parent who is high care but very low demand? A pushover. Anything else? Naive, right? A doormat, right? That's called permissive leadership in the literature. Permissive leadership, right? I want to be your friend, so I'll just do it for you. How many of you have met teachers and principals like this? I'll do everything. How about I do everything and everyone else feel good, right? How long does that last for a principal? You'll wear out. It'll overcome you. All right, so let's do demand. High demand, low care. What do we call them? Jerks, all right? What else? Scrooge, I've heard the general, right? It's called authoritarian leadership. You'll do it because I say so. Now, I've noticed that most people in education aren't neglectful. They got a different job. But they default to either permissive or authoritarian under stress. When you get under stress, sometimes you default to one or the other. Who defaults to permissive, like my wife? I'll just do it for you. Does anybody here default to permissive? My wife cannot sleep at night if she's had a fight with one of our kids, right? I'm like, are you kidding? It's fun. We've waited our whole lives to tell people what to do. Now it's our chance. How many of you default to authoritarian? you'll do it and I'll say so and I'll make it happen. How many of you didn't choose again? You guys are really indecisive people here. We usually default to one or the other. But do you have to choose? Do you have to choose between permissive and authoritarian? That's the question. I call it the fool's dilemma or a false dichotomy. I've got to be the good guy or the bad guy. How many of you ever had this conversation with your spouse? Why am I always the bad guy? Why can't you be the bad guy for once? And so you try to be the good guy and it doesn't work, so you go back to being the bad guy, right? And we go back and forth. So what's the person called who is both high care and high demand? Give them an actual name. Who in your life is both high care and high demand? Do you have anybody in your life like this? Did you have a teacher when you were younger? Give them a name. Tell your table. What's the name? What's the person in your life that you think of? Oh, they loved me, but they really cared about they really held me accountable. Can you think of someone? Think of someone in your life who is both high care and high demand. Did you give it a name? Dad. Mr. Bessler? Mr. Bessler. Mine would be Coach Jacobson. Coach Jacobson, man, I knew he loved me, but man, I had to work hard to please that guy, right? He really pushed me, but man, he loved me. In fact, to this day, I still keep in touch with Coach Jacobson, right? Even after all these years. That was back in the 1900s that he was my teacher, and we're still friends after all this time, right? That's called wise leadership in the literature. Wise leadership. How can you get there? How can you get to that point? That's what we're after. Please be aware, you don't have to make the choice between being the nice principal and the mean principal. You can be both high demand and high care. It just takes a little creativity. Let's be creative. A lot of us are parents. Let's try this. Let's say one of the rules in our house is that you have to have your room clean at least once a week. Okay? So I go downstairs. My 15-year-old daughter's room is an absolute disaster. It's supposed to be clean. Okay, what does neglect do? I just shut the door, right? I don't have time for this. What does permissive do? I'll clean it for you. Who's done this before for their kids? I'll clean it for you. Because if I do it enough times, you'll start doing it for yourself because you'll love me. How'd that work out for you, right? All right, what does authoritarian do? Yes, who's this parent, right? Do you have a dad voice? Even moms have a dad voice, right? Right? One time I was up speaking, and I was speaking to this group of people. We were having fun and laughing, and afterwards my daughter said, "How come you sound so nice when you're on stage?" Right? Because I have that voice. Madeline, right? What? Downstairs, now. What? Madeline, right? And you will do, who's ever stood over their kid? What's that? Dirty clothes. What do we do with dirty clothes? We put them in the laundry. Watch this. Oh, how hard this is. My goodness. Who's ever been this way before, right? Authoritarian. It works. It gets things done. Okay, ask the people at your table. This is the hard one. You got to be creative. What does the wise parent do? I have to preserve the accountability, but I also don't want to lose the relationship. All right, go. Look at the oldest person at your table. Say, you're the most wise. What would you do? What would you do? How do we preserve the relationship and the accountability? Excellent. I love all this discussion. Now, some people will ask me in this example, they'll say, Dr. Smith, what's the right answer? What's the right answer? I don't know. I don't know, because with every child deserves like a different parenting strategy. Have you noticed that the first one's not like the second's not like the third? Here's the key. The key is not finding the right answer. The key is at least understanding I can try to do both high demand and high care. So I'll tell you what I did with her. Number one, because I teach this stuff, I thought, okay, I've got to at least try before I break into authoritarian, right? So I thought to myself, okay, what does she What does she hate? And I know she hates to be embarrassed in front of her brothers. She hates to be punished in front of her brothers. So I said, okay, step one is I'm going to try to preserve the relationship. I'm not going to get mad in front of her brothers. So I went upstairs. She was watching TV with her brothers. And I said, hey, can I talk to you? Why? I just need to talk to you. Why? I said, well, do you want to talk now or do you want to talk later? I'm okay with talking now or talking later. Well, is it bad? I'm like, no, I just want to talk to you. Okay, now. You're making me nervous. Don't be nervous. So I said, let's walk over here. And then I spoke to her and I said, all right, can we talk about your room and the rule that it's supposed to be clean? I've noticed something. Teenagers expect to be interrupted. So they only come up with the first part of their sentences. She said, Dad, I was going to, but... And she expects me to jump in right there with a big tirade. I didn't. I said, but... She's like, well, usually you start talking by now. I said, but what? She said, but I didn't. Shocker. Will you by the end of the day? Dad, it's so much. Here, get this one. It's, I don't know where to start. Have you seen how messy it is? Yeah, I have. How about I'll help you. I'll help you. You go downstairs, get it started. I'll help you. Really help me? Will you yell? Will you stand over me and be like, this is dirty clothes. What do we do with dirty? No, I won't do that. I will just help you. In fact, we'll listen to The Greatest Showman. She loves, it was good the first 1,000 times I heard it downstairs, right? But I said, we'll listen to The Greatest Showman. We did. We listened to The Greatest Showman. We cleaned up the room. We preserved the rule and the relationship. We preserve the rule and the relationship. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but it was the right thing to do for her because every child is different, right? And you have to go through that great effort of getting to know what will work with that child and what won't. One more piece of compassion before we move on. This is probably my favorite thing that came out of my dissertation was I developed kind of a scale of listening. And it seems that those who are the best listeners are also the best leaders. So let's just walk through it. What's the worst form of listening? False listening. It's where people think you're listening, but you're not. Who does this sometimes as principal or as leader, right? People think you're listening, but you're not. Who do you think is worse at this, men or women in general? Men. Men in general are worse at this. Not that they're dumb. It's just they have different minds, kind of, genetically different. Women, let me tell you, in general, these aren't always true of men. It's not always true of women. But in general, let me just kind of let you go on what happens in a man's mind. He's very single task oriented, and so when he is doing something, most of his brain power is occupied on that thing. Women are not like this in general. Usually they've got 9 or 10 things going on at the same time, like many browsers open. They know all of that's how mothers know where all their children are. At the same time. It's pretty incredible. You never give a man more than one child to watch, right? Because he'll do really well with this one, and you're like, where are the others? And he's like, there's others? Right? Very focused on the one. Keep them all in the same room. So there's a tiny part of his brain that monitors his environment. And so when you come in, let's say you walk in the room and your male colleague, teacher, whatever, is sitting there doing his work. You say, hey, and you start talking. This tiny part of his brain says, do you hear that? And this huge part of his brain says, I'm busy. And this tiny part of his brain honestly says something like this. Okay, I'll just say, uh-huh. And it usually goes away. Okay, do that. So you'll hear a man go, uh-huh, yup, uh-huh, yup. Sure thing, sure. You know this is you if you have a lot of conversations like this. We talked about this. No, we didn't. I don't remember talking about this. Yes, we did. It was not yesterday. We talked about this. You said yes. I would never say yes to that, right? So in general, again, these are general principles. Never give a man vital information if he's doing something. All right? You're going to have to, it's like a computer program that runs one program at a time, a computer, and you're going to have to put that program down and bring the next one up. And some of these computers are older, they're slow, so you just kind of got to wait. You'll see it come on, I promise you. I've done this, I've seen the experiments. They'll do this with men. You'll see them come on. They're doing something, they're busy, and all of a sudden, oh, hey. I didn't know you was here, right? I mean, it's just a new program. Listen to, other person program. Okay, selective listening is not that great. Selective listening may be better, but it's not that great. It's where I'm listening, and I'm listening for what I want to hear. I am focused on, it's called presidential politics listening. If you ever watch the presidential debate, they are listening to each other, but what are they listening for? Mistakes. They're listening to things they can grab onto and run with and say, this is why you're wrong, this is why you're terrible, right? So it's not a great way to listen, but sometimes we do that, especially when we're emotional. Passive and casual listening are very similar. Does anybody have someone in their life that listens like this? Uh-huh. Yeah. No way. No, sorry, what? No, don't leave, right? I'm multitasking. I'm listening to a bunch of, how many of you have ever typed an email and talked on the phone at the same time? And you said the word you meant to, you typed the word you meant to say, and you said the word you meant to type, you're like, stop, I just got to stop. So passive and casual listening are important because they send a message. When my son or student walks in the room and my son says, Dad, guess what happened at swim? And I do this. What, bud? What's the message? You're not important. The message is you're not important. Now, is that the real message I want to give him? Of course not. Is that the message I want to give my teachers? Yeah? You're not important. Well, I've got to be aware of the messages I'm sending with my listening. So it's time, if the phone is a big distraction for you, because it is for me, you just got to put it away. Got to put it away so you can give people the message of they're important. Content listening, men are actually best at this. Content listening is where I'm listening for information, right? Just give me the information, what time, where. Okay, I've got it logged in my head. I've got a map there. I'm good. I'm ready to go. Content listening. Discriminative listening is content listening, but I'm also listening for how the message was given. Women are really good at this in general. Let's say, for example, I'm going to fly home tomorrow. I'm going to go to Seattle tonight and fly home tomorrow. And let's say I get home and I say, Sarah, my wife, do you want to go see Iron Man 12, whatever they're on? And she says something like this. Sure. Now, content listening, what did I hear? Yes. So what do? I buy the tickets. We're there. I find out 2 hours later she was not interested in going to this movie. Right? Discriminative listening, and women are generally better at this. Girls, what did she say? No. She said no. Right? Now, I'm going to throw this out there, and it's not meant to be offensive at all, so please don't take it this way. Girls, I'm just going to say, maybe you ought to just say how you feel. Just an idea, right? Guys, we've got to be better at discriminative listening, right? When you talk to a student, how are things? And they say, good. Do they really mean things are good? Because our students are good actors and actresses, aren't they? I'm fine. So you have to pick up on those little clues. All right, one level higher is called active listening. If you can master active listening, be prepared to have a lot of friends and a lot of opportunities, because people will want you around. Stephanie, our keynote, she's an active listener. Just in the first hour of meeting her, I was like, I could spend all day with this woman because what's active listening? It's where are my shoulders? They're right on, okay, so this is Brian. My shoulders are towards him. Where's my eyes? Right on him. Where's my mind? Focused on what he's saying, right? And I'm giving lots of feedback. I'm reflecting back. No way. She said that. It's always said that to you? Does she have any idea what you've done for this event? I'm as floored as you are, Brian. I am just, right? What's the message? You matter. You are important. When a student comes up and says, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, and I turn my whole body towards them and I get on their eye level, what does that say? You have my complete and devoted attention right now. You are important. You matter. Now, one level higher of listening is called compassionate listening. Not everybody can do this. I've asked my wife if I've ever gotten there. She's like, no, more content. But compassionate listening is where I have the ability to listen to someone so closely I feel what they feel. I have no ulterior motive. I'm so focused on you. Let me give you an example. So my wife and I were out to dinner once with an older couple, and They were in their 70s, and they invited us out, and it was fun to go out with them. And I think me and the husband were sitting across from each other, and we were talking about the Red Sox or something. I don't know, something very superficial, content listening, right? Casual listening. And I look over about 10 minutes in the conversation, and my wife and his wife are holding hands, and they're crying. Now, this does not happen to my wife very much. She's very close to the vest, very much like not open with her emotions. And they both looked at me because I was looking at them, and I went, like, what are you doing? Like, this is odd. And she went back to their conversation, and I looked at him like, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. So later on, I asked her, I said, Sarah, what was so amazing? Why did you do that? And she said, Hank, that woman is the best listener I've ever talked to. Which I was kind of offended because I'm obviously the best listener she's ever talked to, but she just forgot. So I said, why? Why was she such a good listener? Okay, pay attention here. She said, well, it was really active listening. She was listening to me. She asked me how many kids we have, and I told her 5, and she said, oh, that's a lot of kids. What are their ages? And she said, oh, we have a daughter who's 12. She was 12 at the time. All the way down to boys. We have twin boys who are 2. Twins who are 2. And the woman said, oh, wow, I bet that's a lot of work, right? Pretty typical conversation. Yeah, it sure is. And then the woman said this. She said, I bet you rely on your mom a lot. And my wife said, oh, I absolutely would, but unfortunately my mother passed away when they were 14 months old. Now, most people, even active listeners, what would they say? I'm so sorry, that's awful. And then we'd probably continue on the conversation. She said, Hank, it looked like I kicked her. She went, Sarah, are you telling me you're raising 5 kids and your mom's already gone? Yeah. I bet you miss her. Yeah. Tell me about her. What was she like? Oh, she was the best grandma anybody could ever ask for. She cared about when their doctor's appointments were and who their teachers were, and no one cares like a grandma. And then they're holding hands, and they both start crying, right? And she said, Sarah, I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Do you have anyone that you can talk to? They both looked at me. I'm going, what are you doing? Why are you? My wife went back, no, there's no one. No, I don't have anyone. I want you to try your very best to spend your time on this side of the listening scale, right? You're not always going to be there. I get it, right? We fall into kind of default mode. But the more time you spend on the right side of the scale, the more trust is going to be in your home and in your school, if you'll take that time to listen. But I realize it's very difficult. All right, we're going to speed through these other 3 because I think you're going to already understand them, and compassion really is where it's at. So let's talk about openness. Openness is, I trust you because you tell me things. I trust you because you don't just tell certain teachers some things and certain teachers other things. You're open with everybody. Nobody has secrets here, or things that need to be kept confidential. You keep them confidential, right? I can trust your degree of openness. Let me show you one study out of Harvard by a woman named Edmondson. She caught everybody's attention with her study headline. It said, higher performing nursing units report higher rates of mistakes. Now that should be interesting to you. Wait, what? This is what she wanted people to do. What? Higher performing nursing units report higher rates of mistakes? That doesn't make sense. And then you read her study and you figured out the key word in this is reported. They didn't commit more mistakes, they reported more mistakes. The lower performing nursing units were committing more mistakes, they just weren't reporting them. Why? Why would people not report mistakes? You guys, these are real big mistakes. Wrong medication, wrong dose, right? 12 hours on your feet and you're tired and you make a mistake. Why would they not report it? They're scared. They're scared. If I report it, I'm going to get in trouble, so it's easier to what? It's easier just to hide it away. There was a man named Wernher von Braun once who worked for NASA. And there was a missile test that almost killed a bunch of civilians in Florida, and he was getting a bunch of heat for it. And a low-level engineer knocked on his door and said, I caused the accident. And he said, excuse me? He said, yeah, I caused the accident. I didn't mean to, but I caused the accident. And everybody expected this kid to be fired, out the door, gone, but he got promoted. He was promoted. They asked Von Braun, why would you promote this guy? He made this huge mistake. And then he said this, absolute honesty is something you simply cannot afford to dispense with in a team effort as difficult as that of missile development. What did he say? What did he tell everybody in the organization? If you make a mistake, talk to us. Give everybody a chance to learn. Talk to us, right? What happens if he punishes that guy and sends him packing? What does that tell everybody else? Keep your mistakes hidden. Keep them hidden because maybe he should have kept it hidden. He could have had a job for another 2 years before they found out, right? So the idea is that somehow I promote this kind of honesty. I'm going to skip this story. Maybe some other time we'll come back to it. Okay, I want to show you this. Has anybody heard of the Joe Hari window? Who's heard of it? Okay, you're going to love this. The Joe Hari window was actually made by two guys named Joe and Harry. They figured that Joe and Harry's window wouldn't sell very well, so they called it the Joe Hari window, and everyone went, wow. Okay. The Joe Hari window, they said everything in your life falls in one of these areas. Everything. There's things that are known to you. Do you see the upper left-hand side? Things that are known to you that are also known to others. I have a pink tie on, right? I got a bad haircut. We all know it. It's fine. All right. The laundry room, what I call the laundry room, they call the private area, are things I know about myself that I don't share with other people. Is it okay to have a laundry room? Yes, there's things you keep to yourself. There's things that aren't professional to share, right, in a professional setting. Should you let anyone in your laundry room ever? Sure, right? Close friends, not random acquaintances. Don't tell us stuff that's in your laundry room. We can't unhear that, right? So just keep it closed. What do you do when people come over to your house? What do you do with the laundry room? You shut the door. Why? Because you're dishonest? No, you just don't want to subject them to that, right? You don't want to be like, well, in the name of honesty, well, here's where I got this stain. No one does that, right? They said there are things about you that are unknown to you and unknown to others. They call that the unknown area. I call it the potential, right? It's the idea that there might be incredible things about you that you just don't know yet that are still coming. That's our students, right? They have incredible gifts. We're trying to unlock that potential. The last box, and this is the whole point of the model, is things that are unknown to you but are known to everybody else. They're called blind spots. They're called blind spots. Things that you're doing that you don't recognize that you're doing. Things that you're saying. How many of you know someone who talks way too much but they don't seem to know it, but everybody else does? How many of you know someone who's socially awkward but they don't know it? Right? If you don't know any of these people, chances are it's you. Right? It's called the blind spot. Can I tell you a very quick story? You might find this funny. One time, we were just newly married. We were walking down the street, home from a date. My wife stopped me and said, "Can I tell you something?" And I went, "What?" She said, "Promise you won't get mad." No. I'm not going to tell you then. Well, you got to tell me now. Well, promise you won't get mad. Okay, I promise. No, I don't believe you. Well, how do you want me to promise? Okay, if you get mad, I spend $1,000 tomorrow. No questions. I was like, whoa. Okay, I promise. I'm like, now I really have to control myself. I didn't know what she was going to say. She even rubbed my shoulders before. Have you ever done this to someone? Rub their shoulders before, like get them ready? Okay? Like, this is going to hurt. She looks at me and she says, "Sweetheart, we've been married maybe 2 years." She goes, "Oh." She looked down. "You eat really weird." That's not what I expected to hear. Now, what's the first thing? When people try to show us blind spots, what's our first reaction? No, I don't. We get defensive. You're just jealous. But all of a sudden I realized, wait, she's probably not jealous. Why is she telling me this? And all of a sudden I realized, why is she telling me this? She cares about me. And she said, just tonight at dinner, we were out with that other couple, and you were just going, have you noticed that, there's food outside your plate when you're done? I'm like, isn't that everyone? No. She said, the people we were with just watched tonight. They just watched. They were just amazed at the show you were putting on, right? And so now we practice. It went from the blind area into the public arena. Now, I love this because I was reading through your booklet. Go back to your booklet. I think it's on page 15. Okay, look at page 15. Look at under the strategy. You see that third paragraph there? One cannot force someone else into self-reflection. Ultimately, it is a personal choice. Therefore, here we'll discuss some strategies we personally use to aid our own self-reflection. I love the authors of this, right? It's so easy to read. Journaling, daily journaling allows us to see what we're thinking. In our writing, it is our writing, our way to understanding. Second, this is what I want you to see. A second strategy is having a critical friend. Someone who is willing to ask tough questions and give you the tough answers and give you the tough solutions. How many of you have a critical friend? Someone who's willing to tell you if something's wrong, right? That is absolutely crucial in overcoming our own blind spots, overcoming in this Johari window. All right, we're going to speed up here and we're going to hit reliability. What is the tallest geyser in Yellowstone National Park? Old Faithful. Old Faithful is wrong, actually. It's not Old Faithful. The tallest geyser in Yellowstone National Park is Steamboat Geyser, which is 3 times the size of Old Faithful. No one goes to see Steamboat. Guess why? You never know when it's going to erupt. One time it had 72 seconds between eruptions. One time it went 54 years between eruptions. No one ever knows. So where does everybody go? Everybody goes to Old Faithful. Why? It's not that tall, but it's reliable. It is absolutely faithful. They even have a little clock there. It says Old Faithful's next eruption will be in, I told my wife we should get one of those for the kitchen. Mom's next eruption will be in, right? Absolutely consistent. I can count on that. It's absolute reliability. Now, do any of you know the painting, the most valuable painting that's housed in the United States of America? It's in New York City. It's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I think. It's by Vincent van Gogh. Do you know what it's called? Starry Night. It's called Starry Night. It's worth, economists say, $165 million. Right? $165 million for Starry Night. There was an art student who decided to break Starry Night, not the original, luckily, a very nice replica, into 2-inch cutouts. She cut it into, she wanted to count the brush strokes in Starry Night, and she quickly found out there was a lot more than she thought. Right? From a distance, you might say, I could do that. I could count them. But as you get closer, you realize there's many more than you ever realized. And here's my question for you. Which brushstroke was it that made it worth $165 million? Can you pick out the one? Right? Before that, kindergarten painting. After that brushstroke, $165 million. The answer is, it's all of them. Unless it's a signature. There you go. I heard that in the back. Yeah. It's all of them. Now, would you take any of them alone as a great, priceless work of art? No. Alone, they're quite, what's the word? Quite ordinary? They're quite ordinary all by themselves, but it's them all together which make this work of art. You see that as a principle? A lot of the things you do that are just reliable, you're on time, you're there, you're visible, you're a handshake, a smile, I learned your name, I talked to you. These aren't maybe things that people go, that changed my life. But it's the conglomerate of all them together that create this great leadership style. It's a bunch of tiny little things that in isolation aren't that impressive. But wow, they are impressive when you put them all together over time. So that's what we mean by reliability. It means also, by the way, that your words and actions have to line up. When you're reliable, that means what you say and what you do are the same. Anybody picked up this book yet? Trust Matters by Megan Shannon Moran? I would highly recommend this for every principle. She follows 3 principles around. One, she says it's a low trust principle, one that's a mid trust principle, and one that's a high trust principle. She goes through and says, okay, what do they do? Here's a couple of quotes. She said, our principal rarely, this is a teacher, our principal rarely gets into classrooms to observe or give feedback. But when we had our accreditation visit, right in front of the whole team, our principal said she gets in every classroom at least once a year, if not more. He said it. He said that most were informal drop-in visits. We all knew it wasn't true. We couldn't believe he would come out and lie like that. After that, I never trusted him again. I never trusted him again because his words and his actions don't line up. Another quote, we really miss our old principal. When you would ask him something, he would say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And he always would. He was just very thoughtful and deliberative in his decisions, right? Reliable. Our new principal will make decisions right on the spot. When she gets more information or somebody complains, she changes it. We never know what the final decision might be, when it might change. It leaves everybody guessing, right? That's the idea of reliability. I always get the same person every day. It's absolutely reliable. Okay, we need to finish up. We're going to talk expertise. Do you remember I told you about I like that quote. Life's hard. It's harder if you're stupid. So the idea is I trust you because you know what you're doing. I trust you. You might ask me to do something that I don't understand, but I trust that you understand why I'm doing it. Right? You're smarter than me. I'm willing to do this for you. Like today, I'm going to get on a flight to Seattle. Right? Why do I get on the flight? Because I know the pilot loves me? No. I know he knows what he's doing. I know he knows what he's doing. At least I'm hoping he knows what he's doing. Right? Expertise matters. Do people come to you for problems in their school because you know how to answer it? You know the answers. You have the experience. You're there. Right? Because if not, you're going to go to the most experienced. You're going to the one who thinks, you're going to go to the most competent person. Right? Can you think of a teacher that everybody goes to for help? Right? They're seen as the most competent in the school. I'm going to go to you for help because you know what you're doing. So let's talk about our man, Ernest Shackleton. This is where we started, if you remember. On May 20th, 1916, Ernest Shackleton brought 29 guys back to life. It's in this book, Endurance. If you like true history books, this one will be a life changer for you, kind of like Boys in the Boat. It's one of the best. Ernest Shackleton wants to be the first man to cross Antarctica by dog sled. I don't know why people have these goals. I want to cross Hawaii by hammock. He wants to cross Antarctica by dog sled. Fine. Do your thing. They get down into the Weddell Sea, and their biggest fear comes to pass, and that is they get stuck in the sheet ice. These are these big masses of ice, miles across, that sometimes come together. And he abandons ship, gets all the men, the lifeboats, the dogs off the boats, and the ice crushes their boat. This is floating ice in the middle of the Weddell Sea in the year 1914. What odds do you have? Are you on land? No, you're on floating ice. Ice that's going to break up into pieces, right? And they knew they were in trouble. This is what Shackleton said. I thank the men. They kept their camera, luckily. I thank the men for their steadiness and good morale they have shown in these trying circumstances. Trying circumstances. That's like running out of gravy. That's a trying circumstance. This is the face of death, right? I told them that I had no doubt that provided they continued to work their utmost and to trust me, we would all reach safety in the end. Do you think he believed it? As a leader, do you always believe it? We're going to make it through this. And then you turn around, I don't know how we're going to make it through this, right? But he believed, I think. He said, we're going to do this. Now listen to what one of his crewmen wrote. One crewman wrote, the job was up to us. We were in a mess, and the boss was the man who could get us out. That is trust, right? Now think about this with your teachers. I'm in a mess. My principal, she'll help me out. My principal, he knows what to do, right? So they start their efforts to somehow stay alive. They set up Ocean Camp. Why do they call it Ocean Camp? Because it's on the ocean, and that's where they live for the next 8 months. 8 months they live at Ocean Camp, right, where the temperature never goes above 24 degrees. That's the highest that it goes, 24 degrees. They said they didn't like sunny days at 24 degrees because it melted the top 3 inches of the ice, and they had to slosh around all day. They liked it better when it was below freezing. What is your one concern? You have shelter, you have water. What don't you have? Food. You don't have food. This is the only food that they have. Shackleton asked, these guys don't come up on the ice only for their food. Have you ever seen Happy Feet? What's their food? Penguins. They want penguins. They want fish, but if they're going to come up on land, they're going after penguins. They don't have any penguins. This is a true story. Shackleton asks his roundest, shortest guy to get all in black, to go out on thin parts of the ice and waddle around. How do you, first of all, how do you tell your friend they're shaped like a penguin? Two, how do you get someone to trust you that much, right? To be bait for the other friends. Well, I'll keep going on this story. I'll let you read it sometime. Good news is they make it to Elephant Island, where they finally touch land for the first time in, get this, 502 days. 502 days, they're finally back on land. Now, the good news is you're on land and you're in Antarctica. What's the bad news? You're on land and you're in Antarctica, right? I told teenagers this story, and one girl seriously said, why didn't they just call? I'm like, I don't know. They should have brought their chargers. So, all right, Shackleton decides that he and 5 other guys are going to make one boat out of their 3 lifeboats. So they're going to take all the boats apart. They're going to make one. They're going to make this lifeboat, and they're going to take that boat 800 miles, 6 weeks, back to civilization to get help. Would you rather be on the boat or would you rather stay on land? Depends on where Penguin that guy is, right? But that's a risky situation. What happens if you're on the boat? Well, you might die, but at least you know. Because if you stay on the island, these guys die, and that's it. They took the car, right? You're going to be there forever. We'll finish here. Every single one of those guys gets home. One guy's wife had already remarried after his funeral, but other than that, it was a grand celebration. Shackleton's passion for his mission and for his men. Think about this with being a principal. Shackleton's passion for his mission and his men, his teachers, his students, his parents, his passion for leadership, his passion for motivation. They were a source of energy and courage during times of severe adversity. I want to ask you a very serious question. Are you a source of energy and courage to everyone in the school? Are you a source of energy and courage to all the students? Not just a few, to all the students, to all the teachers, not just a few. These virtues made him a leader that people wanted to follow. What do we call that? Do you remember? Not formal authority, moral authority. They wanted to follow him. Even when his men may have not have wanted to do something for themselves, they would do it for him. He inspired this kind of loyalty because he gave it to his men. They respected and trusted him because he respected and trusted them. They took care of him because he took care of them. They put him first because he put them first. My hope for you is that you will be a little bit motivated, a little bit more excited about being the leader at your school and to build what? Absolute and total trust. Thank you so much for having me today. You've been absolutely wonderful. So kind of you. Thank you.